The subject of nature versus nurture is a very interesting topic with regards to homosexuality, even for myself. There have been many scientists and studies that have been undertaken to determine if there's a biological cause to homosexuality, whether it's physiological or biological, genetic, hormonal, or some combination thereof. In other words, do we have a choice, or is it something that we have relatively no control over? Now, I'm going to be honest with you here. I actually do believe that some of those studies, not all of them, but some of those studies do indicate that there is a biological component to homosexuality. Now, I don't believe, though, that biology is the total final word on this subject. I believe that human beings have a free will. There are a few behaviors, human behaviors, that we don't have any control over. For example, eating, sleeping, drinking, breathing. You might try to deprive yourself of those things for a period of time, but ultimately our survival is contingent upon doing them. If you don't do them, you're going to die. But most human behavior is not that way, and sexuality is not that way, as a matter of fact. In other words, you're not going to die if you do or you don't have sexual activity. So we have a free will. We're not fatalistic. We do not believe that human beings are governed by instincts like the animals. We might have a predisposition, but a predisposition is not the same thing as a predestination. I might be inclined to something, but that doesn't mean I have to do it. I could be very tall, I could be very athletic, I could be very good at consistently getting a basketball to fall through a hoop, but that does not mean that I am predetermined to be a basketball player. I don't have to do that. Or I could be short and still decide to be a basketball player. May not be a very good one, but your genes do not dictate your life. No biology dictates your life. You have choice over most of your human behaviors. If homosexuality is biological, then heterosexuality would be biological as well, and yet we have a choice over our behavior. My choice would be that I'm not supposed to lust after another woman. Not that every man has been, or even myself, have been perfect at that, but Jesus said that if you lust after a woman in your heart, that you've committed adultery. So I have a choice over that behavior. Same would be whether or not I want to be faithful to my wife. I have a choice over that, even if I have a biological urge to do otherwise. In other words, we're all born sinners, but we must reject and resist those temptations, or at least make an attempt to do so by the grace and the strength that Jesus gives. Now, homosexuals might say to me, well, what you're telling us is unfair. You're saying that we can never satisfy our sexual desires if we follow what you're saying. No, you can. You just have to do it the way that is sanctioned by God, the way that I did. You can marry a woman, and then you can start a family, and you can satisfy your sexual desires. If you're a woman, it would be the opposite case scenario. But then you might say, well, that's a hard choice. You're telling us to go against what we want to do. Well, that's what being a human being is about. Sometimes we have to make the hard choices. We don't always get to do what we want to do. Sometimes we've got to do the right thing or the hard thing. That's why we're not like the animals. So, for example, I might want to, if someone's been mean to me, I might want to respond. It might be my natural inclination to respond in an unkind way as well. But I have a choice, and I'm not supposed to do that. The same is true if I hit my finger with a hammer. I might have a natural inclination to cuss or to engage in profanity. But ultimately, I have a choice. I'm not supposed to do that, and Jesus forbids that I do that. So, humans have a ability to say yes or no to certain behaviors. Then I've had homosexuals say, well, why would I choose this with all these negative consequences? Well, people are always choosing to do things that have negative consequences. That's basically part of human life. People, for example, will choose to drink and drive, and there'll be a negative consequence. Someone might choose to rob a bank, and there'll be a negative consequence. So people choose to do that all the time. But we are not robots. We do have control over our lives. I would also say that I think when you say we have no choice, what you're basically doing is you're blaming God. Like Adam and Eve. Adam said, well, it's this woman that you gave me. Now you're just changing it to say, God, it's this gene or this hormone or this physiology that you gave me. So you're trying to blame God for your own behavior. But we always have a choice for our behavior. We always have a choice over what we decide to do or not to do. And homosexuality is no different.